Hello and welcome to your new session with edupediaworld.com, your favorite portal for online education. In the previous session we had started with measures of central tendency. We would be continuing the same today, and to recall, we had started the first topic, that is arithmetic mean. Just to recall the formula, we had seen the basic method, that is the direct method, both for raw data as well as for the data when it is classified in a frequency table. Both for in case of raw data, the formula is summation of x divided by n, and in case of frequency distribution, whether grouped or ungrouped, it is summation of x into f divided by capital N, where your capital N is summation of f. The only difference is that in case if you have a class interval, that is if you have grouped frequency, what you do is you take the mid value, and that is the summation of upper and the lower limits divided by 2. You take the mid value of the group as your variable x. Alright, before we proceed, let's take a problem on one of these and practice and see if we have understood or not. And after that we will go to one of the shortcut methods. As I had promised earlier, we would take the deviation method. So let's take a problem for today. Alright, so this is a problem where we have class intervals, and this time we have the weekly wages of workers, say some workers in certain locality or maybe in any of the workshop, and the number of workers are given in the second column. Okay, now the class intervals here are given. These are the weekly wages in rupees or say any currency, and these are the number of workers. You need to find the arithmetic mean of this data. Just to test yourself, you can pause me for a while and see if you can do it, and then we will do it together, and you can check if you have done it correctly. Alright, so let's do it together and see if you have got it correctly or not. We need to find the mid value of this class mid value, because we see that the class intervals are given and we will take the mid value as our variable x. Now what is the mid value here? What do we do to take the mid value? Well, we add both the lower limits and the upper limits and we divide it by 2. Okay, so here it is 269, let me put it in parenthesis, 269 plus 240 over 2, and that gives me 254.5. in the same way, let's do the next one. It's 299 plus 270 divided by 2. Now you see that we are getting the data in decimal, and we will have to be careful about this when we are calculating. The next one is 329 plus 300 divided by 2, and so on. We can either calculate it this way, or we can just directly, now we have got a pattern that there is a difference of 30 each time, so we can add 30 because we see that the data is regular, so we can keep adding 30 to the previous number instead of doing this calculation every time. So next one would be, it would be 344 0.5, and then exactly it will be 374.5, 404.5, 434.5. Yeah, so these are the values of x we have. And to calculate the arithmetic mean by direct method, what we need to do is find the product of x and f. That is simply x multiplied by f here, and the same to all the cells. We can just drag and drop it. And what do we do next? Yeah, we need to find the sum total of the workers and the sum total of x multiplied by f. So let's calculate the sum here. The sum we have 100 workers, and the sum total here we can simply copy and drop this here to get the sum. And now to what would be the mean? Let me calculate the mean here. Arithmetic mean would be the sum of x multiplied by f over the total number of workers, which is 100, and this comes to be 336.7. so that is our arithmetic mean in this case. Alright, now we see that the data here, the value of x, are all in decimal, and if you were not doing it on an Excel sheet, if you were doing it yourself without a calculating device, it will really be cumbersome. So maybe in these cases when we don't have a calculating device, and usually you're not allowed in some of the examinations a calculating device, so in those cases, or maybe even otherwise, if you don't have, you can use the shortcut methods. And so we will take up the shortcut method which we have, and in the first case we will take the deviation method. So let's take the previous question which we did, ungrouped frequency question, which we did in the last session to start with. As I had said that the treatment for grouped and ungrouped frequencies are almost same with slight differences. So maybe first we will do a question on ungrouped frequency, and then we will move on to a grouped frequency distribution table. Alright, so here now in a deviation method, what we basically do is we first assume a value for the mean. Yeah, we know in general that arithmetic mean is one of the central tendency value, and it falls somewhere in between. It takes one of the central value of the set of data. Now in this case my data is ranging from 5 to 14, so maybe my midpoint is somewhere around this region, say 9, 10 or 11. So let's say, for example, let's take either 9 or 10. So maybe let's assume that my arithmetic mean for this problem is say 9. Let me write that here. Okay, this is my assumed mean. And then what we do is we subtract all the variables from the assumed mean, and we call that as the deviation. So let me write that here, deviation. And this deviation, let me give a name to it, a variable name d, and deviation is x minus the assumed mean, the variable minus the assumed mean. So in this case it's going to be 5 minus 9. Similarly in the next one it's going to be 6 minus 9 and so on. So we can just drag this formula to all the cells and we see we have got the deviation. Next what we do is, see previously, now what happens when you take the deviation from the assumed mean? You get a smaller number, you get numbers around 0. Like when we add this column we get very close, we get a number very close to 0 and we see that the numbers have become smaller. Now calculation for smaller numbers are rather easier and it's always I mean if you have larger numbers you can always cut it down or bring it down to these smaller numbers and do the calculation. The next step is we calculate the product of x into f. No, now instead of x we take d, that is the deviation, multiplied by the frequency. Yeah, so this is the change. See, instead of here from x we have got one column additionally. From x we have assumed a value a and we subtracted it and we have got a new set of data called deviation d. We are going to find the product of d and f instead of previously as we used to do x and f. So when we take d and f, here we have d multiplied by f, we get a negative number up to this and then a 0 and then positive numbers. Yeah, so this is the product. And now what we do, we will find the sum of d and f. Previously we used to find the sum of x multiplied by f. Now since this is deviation method, we are finding the deviation from some assumed value and then finding the product of that with frequency and finally finding the sum of that. Now while taking the summation here, of course when we take in Excel we will get the right value, but you need to be careful when you're doing it maybe using pen and paper, because there are certain negative numbers and there are certain positive numbers. Don't mix them up. This is basic mathematics. You need to take the sum of the positive numbers separately, sum of negative numbers separately, and then subtract the negatives from the positives. Yeah, so let's find the sum of the column here. Well, the sum happens to be minus 112, and also we need to find the sum of the frequency as usual, and the sum of frequency is 670. Now how do we calculate the actual mean, that is x bar, arithmetic mean? Let's do that here. Yeah, arithmetic mean is, see, we have actually subtracted the assumed mean from x's. So now what we are going to do is we are going to add the value of assumed mean to the ratio of summation of d into f by summation of f. Let me do it here and then I'll make it clear to you if it is not clear for now. So what we do here is let me do it step by step. First step, what we do is we find the ratio of d over f, d divided by summation of frequencies, and this happens to be minus 0.0167. This is of course not our arithmetic mean. Let me, because we are doing step by step, the arithmetic mean would be a plus a. Now what is the value of a? We have assumed a as 9, okay, plus the value which we have got here, and that happens to be 8.328. And to recall, I think you have already done this question previously by direct method. There also we had got 8.83 as our answer. Yeah, so let me summarize this and then we will take up another question using this method. Yeah, let me do that here. We have started our deviation method. Deviation method. Now, the case of raw data is really trivial. We are not taking that. Oh, yeah, this x may confuse you. We are using it as variable, so let me just put a blank here. Now, in case of both frequency distribution and grouped frequency distribution, our formula, let me first write the formula and then explain to you. The mean in case of deviation method is we find a value d, we multiply it with f, we take the summation of these two, we divide that summation by the total frequency, and we add this to our assumed mean a. What is a? A is assumed mean. What value can be taken as the assumed mean? Well, you can take any value, but the reason for taking this is to simplify your calculation, and to simplify your calculation it is best to be taken from very close to the actual mean, and we know that the actual mean lies in the center, in the mid of the data. So taking somewhere close to the central value would be more helpful. And what is d, the deviation? Well, d is the difference between the variable x and the assumed value I. Hope this is clear. If so, let's take another problem and practice it. Let's take the previous question itself, which we have done, and let's redo it using the deviation method. Yeah, so we have the class intervals and we have the number of workers. Let's, as usual, we'll first find the mid value, and lucky for us we have the mid values here known to us, and so let's take them directly. The mid values are so these are the mid values here. And then what do we do after taking the mid value? Exactly, we will calculate the deviation. Deviation is given by d, and the formula is x minus a. But before that we will of course have to assume the value of a. Let me take a, the assumed mean, as now as I said we'll have to take something from the center. Here we see we have got totally 7 classes, so let's leave 3 classes from bottom and 3 classes from top, so we are left with the 4th class, and let's take 344.5 as our assumed mean. Yeah, so now let's calculate the deviation from the actual value. Deviation would be x minus a, and let's fix the place for a by putting the dollar symbol. Yeah, so it is minus 90. The next one would be minus 60. As we know that the classes differ by an interval of 30, we will get the values according to that: 0, 30, 60 and 90. Yeah, so these are the deviations. What do we do next? Exactly, find the product of d and f. We have both of them here. This is our f and this is d, so product of d multiplied by f for all. First we can just paste the formula here into all the cells. Yeah, so you've got this, and then we need to find the sum of this. So sum, let's call the function sum, and again, when you're doing it manually, you'll have to be careful about the positive and negative numbers. So the sum happens to be minus 780. Also, we need to find the sum of the frequency here, and that happens to be 100, which is known to us already. Now, to find the arithmetic mean, what we need to do is we need to find the ratio of sum of d into f by sum of f, and that is this divided by 100, which happens to be minus 7.8. And finally, to find the arithmetic mean, we will add a to this, and wow, we see that we've got the same answer, 336.7 here as well as here. Yeah, so by any method you do, you end up getting the same answer without any difference altogether. Fine, so this was our deviation method, and maybe to practice we can take another question. Let me explain the question to you, then you can pause me and solve it. Later I will solve it for you and you can check your working. Here again we have class intervals given, and this time the weights of a certain number of people in a certain locality or in some classroom or somewhere is given here. The weight starts from 60 and goes up to 95 with the intervals of 5 in each class, and the number of people in each of these classes, that is in each of these groups, are mentioned in the second column. So you have the class interval in the first column, which is the weights of people, and you have the frequency in the second column. You need to calculate the arithmetic mean of this data using deviation method. Pause me for a while, solve it yourself, and then you can check the answer with me. Alright, let's do it together. First step is to find the mid value of each of these classes. Mid value and to find the mid value, in fact mid value will take the variable name x. What we do, we take the upper value 65 added to the lower value, which is 60, and then divided by 2. Of course I need to put a parenthesis here. Yeah, so it's 62.5, and then we see that the difference, the classes differ by 5, so we can keep adding 5 to this. So next one would be 67.5, and if you're not comfortable, if it's confusing, if it is irregular, the best way is to calculate by taking the sum of the upper and the lower limits of the class and then divided by 2. Anyways, so next is 72.5, 77.5, 82.5, 87.5, and lastly 92.5. These are my mid values. What do we do next? Exactly, we need to find the assumed mean. Assumed mean, we give a name to assumed mean as A. And what can we take as the assumed mean? Let's see how many data we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Of course, we can leave 3 from bottom, and we can take 77.5 as our assumed mean. Now next we need to find the deviation d equals your mid values, that is the variable x minus the assumed mean a. Here it would be 62.5 minus 77.5, and to fix this 77.5 I'll put dollar symbol here so that we can drag the formula and drop into all the cells. Here the difference is 15 minus 15, drop it into other cells because we have the same formula, and we get the deviation values 15, 10, 5, 0, 5. Now you see that if we add the deviation here, it's going to be 0, and this is the most suited case. Next, what do we do? Yeah, we find the product of D and F. So next is D multiplied by F, and that happens to be D into F, and then again we drag it down to all the cells. We get D into F. We need to calculate the sum of the deviations. Sum and that happens to be again negative. Also we need to find the sum of the number of people, that is 32. Next we need to find the mean. Let's do it in one cell directly. Let me write arithmetic mean is A, which is 77.5, plus, put it in parenthesis, summation of df divided by summation of f, and the answer is 74.2187. Fine, so we are left with step deviation method, and that's simple after you've learned deviation method. So let's keep it for the next video. We stop here. Keep watching edupediaworld.com. Thank you.